So if you guys saw my video yesterday, this is basically the tea of the gods. Now, one of the beautiful things that I like is that it actually matches so beautifully with my my bronze leaf hibiscuses here. All right, as you can see, to me this drink looks like a magenta color. I don't know if you guys can agree with that, but that's the color it looks like to me. So I'm gonna get into my office and then I'll basically start my video. As I get into my office, I'm getting into my my Jeep. Just give me one quick second. All right, we got it. We got this. All right. I mean, you know what's funny is if you guys saw that video yesterday, this is basically the color of what this tea comes out. I didn't add anything to it. It's just the ingredients that I have in there. And I mean, this color, I mean, is beautiful. It literally looks like a magenta color. Now, what I did add to it was basically lemon and a little bit of agave nectar. And I mean, and let's say a little sprinkle, like, you know, of pink Himalayan salt. And it's basically amazing. This is one of the most beautiful drinks you can have. This is truly the tea of the gods. I'll tell you that right now. If you really want to open up your body in all kinds of ways, I mean, energetically, this is the way to go. You know what is beautiful is the minty. It's got such a refreshing feeling when you drink it, and it's really amazing. I mean, you could even take it before bedtime and you'd have a 99.99999% chance of lucid dreaming over actually not taking it. But just remember, when you take this or when you do anything, intent is everything, you know. And the reason I even mentioned this is because you can basically have an intent and use anything to your advantage. So for example, I'm going to talk about certain things that I used to do, and I still do to some extent, just not as often as possible for, you know, reasons where there's a lot more distractions around me. And, you know, of course, for obvious reasons, when I get into it, you'll see what I'm talking about. But in actuality, when I was a little kid, maybe up to like my teenage years, late into my teenage years, I played with toys. Now, I had all different kinds of superheroes. I had different type of characters, maybe like, let's say, some Thundercat characters, some G.I. Joe characters, some Sector characters, He-Man characters, you know, all Marvel, DC characters, you know, but more or less like the old school kind of toys. And they were all kind of like the same size, you know what I'm saying? I even had a couple of other ones, like maybe even some WWE ones. But the crazy thing is that these characters didn't have the actual characteristics of what you would know in the movies. So let's say, for example, like I had one from the Sectors, and it was the blonde guy, but he was basically like from the insect race, but he had nothing to do with the insect race. In my movie, in my head, when I was playing, these characters were all WWE characters, and I gave them their own personality, some closely related to some that I already know from wrestling, and some basically that I just made up, which is beautiful. And the reason I say this is for this reason. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I can tell you this is basically a fact, and anybody who watches wrestling can attest to this. I've watched videos basically of certain things where have happened, and let's say I watched just recently the you know, when CM Punk got debuted into AEW. I mean, I could watch that over and over and over again, and I'm still gonna get the same amount of goosebumps. You know what I'm saying? The same, and it's not even just the action, is the energy that the fans and the people put out the moment the song hits, and then you hear the like, it's just that initial burst of, you know, the reaction from the crowd that basically gets your goosebumps going. It's such a weird thing, but it doesn't matter when it happens. You can watch it in real time, and it's as if it's reliving the moment happening right away. So you get that euphoric, like, goosebump feeling. Okay, And there was another one where WCW and ECW were invading WWE, and they were messing everybody up. They were really tearing everybody up from WWE. And, you know, they were outnumbered and whatnot. And I remember Stone Cold was a heel at this point. And then, you know, he came out, and the moment that that everybody was getting beat up, Stone Cold came in his pickup and started, you know, pretty much cleaning house from the back room until he made his way into the arena. And as in the ring, there was a bunch of the WWE characters getting beat up by the characters from WCW and ECW, which Vince McMahon bought. Vince McMahon bought these companies. And, you know, he made a storyline around the fact that these companies were invading WWE. Now, what's funny is that while this whole thing's happening in the ring, the crowd is going Stone Cold, Stone Cold. And, you know, once you hear the glass shatter, and then he comes out, you know, talking a bunch of smack, you hear the announcer like Jim Ross, which I don't know why. Here's the thing, man. I know they got new announcers and whatnot, but the old school announcers, for some reason, those are the ones that made the environment. And I even heard Jim Ross, the way he explained or talked about CM Punk, you know, as the whole scenario was happening. You know, the announce table makes a huge difference to, you know, along with the crowd, how you basically absorb this type of energy and how you feel this energy, especially when it's coming from the crowd or whatnot. But when Stone Cold came and he saved ECW and WCW, and he went in and started stunning everybody, I mean, goosebumps everywhere. I can still watch that till this day and still get goosebumps. You know what I'm saying? So there's different scenarios that would cause that goosebump reaction. Certain feuds, like when Shawn Michaels had feud with Bret the Hitman Hart, and, you know, the Iron Man match and how it ended. You know, the screw job, and then what came after, just the whole scenario, the character, how they pop and shine, even when they're getting booed. There's a certain type of feeling when a character gets booed, you can't help but to like this character. But then there's a difference between somebody getting booed in a way where they're booed, but they're getting the attention that kind of keeps you drawn into the type of boos where you just don't care about that character. Like, you know, like when Roman Reigns gets booed when he was a good guy, where the WWE was trying to force this character down people's throat. Or even John Cena. John Cena should have been heel a long time ago, but, you know, they kept him as the heel, the baby face the whole time. But, you know, a character when they're heels, like Shawn Michaels, where he can have the crowd at the palm of their hands. Like, you know, there was one time where, you know, he came out and he was pretty much promoting his fight with Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania, but he was you know, doing this speech in Canada, and, you know, the Canadian fans were basically yelling for Bret Hart's name when Bret Hart had already left wrestling, you know, because it happened after the whole Montreal screw job and whatnot. So you can't help but to notice that he wasn't really talking about Bret Hart until he slid in, you know, the Bret Hart scenario into that mix, into the whole promo that he was cutting. And what's crazy is that he basically was saying that, you know, Bret Hart has no guts, and, you know, that if he was to come out, he would like get in his face and say, Bret, I'll screw you once and I'll screw you again. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you just hear his music. And oh man, it was crazy because you just hear this pop, this crowd reaction. And till this day, I still get goosebumps watching that. But that was Shawn Michaels trolling the fans. You see, the fans thought that Bret Hart was really coming out. It would have been the most iconic moment in history, but it never happened, you know. And the reason it never happened was because Shawn Michaels said that, you know, as long as he's there, Bret will never step foot in a WWE ring ever again. So the reason I'm even bringing all this up is because when you look at, for example, these scenarios, and they make you feel a certain way, certain theme songs, even certain songs that you may hear that you may like, that some may consider even corny, you know, they give you chills, they give you goosebumps. But these things are moving you. They're making your spirit happy. You know, it's a beautiful experience. Yet you start to think about it. Well, here's the thing, man. If I'm feeling this and I'm not even there, What does that mean? Doesn't that mean that we're all connected to some extent, that we're all basically one to some extent? Now, here's the point I'm trying to make with this. Whenever I played with these characters, okay, these characters are inanimate objects, okay? Now, when I started to create these scenarios based on like things that I've seen from wrestling and whatnot, but I started to, you know, twist it in my own way. My toys actually were animated. I redefined the meaning of each character, you know? And when they were in my mind, in my imagination, I created these scenarios. I would always have my computer handy and I would always play the theme songs when the characters come out. But then the funny thing is that when the characters came out, you know, let's say I would have a certain scenario, somebody's getting beat up, and then all of a sudden somebody came, I would play that theme song, and in my mind I would play the toy coming out, and then, you know, pretty much creating havoc in the ring, boom, 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 beating everybody up, and I would in my mind create the crowd making that loud noise, and then I'm playing in my mind the commentating team also as well. Could you believe this? Check this out. And then I'm like creating the whole thing in my head, and as I'm playing, I'm getting goosebumps, and this character's looking so highlighted to me, so powerful, you know, because you make the character look strong. You can make the character look weak or strong. You can make the character resilient, you know what I'm saying? Where when I'm playing, I would make the character constantly get pinned, but then he would continue to keep kicking out, like constant resilience. So there were certain characters that were known by their endurance, their resilience. Certain characters were just really, really, really strong. And then there were other characters who were there basically, like, you know, filling in the spaces, but they were also very strong. It created like a real strong roster where it was hard to get to that actual title, because I noticed that, you know, in WWE, when the title gets passed around, you know, hand in hand to like certain people and whatnot, even characters that some people would be like, wow, this guy became champion, you know, it kind of loses the glitz and the power of a champion actually having that belt. It would be like, the WWE belt doesn't mean anything anymore, you know? So I would create the roster so strong in my mind where it was actually very hard for somebody to actually get to the belt, but I would always have that one character that would pop, and it would always usually be a heel, and this heel was really strong in my head. It was, and it would be where the good guy would come and try to fight, and you know, to some extent the heel would cheat, and the crowd, it kept getting the crowd on their toes because there was constantly like close pinfalls. The referee would get knocked out in my head, and then the crowd is reacting to it like it's just a real exciting moment. Then the fight would actually get taken out to the back, you know, like into it turned into a street fight because there was no pinfalls anywhere. It turned out to be that way because, you know, the ref counted both men out, but then I would create a scenario in my head where I would have a character that looked like Vince McMahon. I actually had a character that looked like Vince McMahon. It was actually one of the one of the Ghostbusters characters. And one of these Ghostbusters characters actually looked like Vince McMahon, which was pretty funny. And it was Peter Venkman, I think it was, because he had the suit. One of the characters, you know, one of the toys that you can buy, he had the suit. So I would play it out where they rang the bell, but then Vince McMahon came out and said, no, the match continues. Make it a no false count, no pinfall anywhere, because somebody has to be a winner. And it would go to the back, and then I would create like a Rocky, you know, when Rocky fought Tommy Gunn in the street. In part 5, I would create a scenario like that where there's a bunch of people around, the cameras are around, and then, you know, they're getting thrown to the garbage cans, and then, you know, one would get slammed to the hood of a car, and then would get slammed so hard to you know, almost through the windshield. And, you know, these characters, I would imagine in my mind that they're like bloodied up and beat up and whatnot, and then it would get to a point where it would kind of end the same way where, you know, where Rocky was kind of like, and you just see the people in the back. And then, because I watched Rocky 5, and when I watch that street fight, I get goosebumps there. So, and then, you know, you basically look at all these things happening, and then you just create all the movie however you want it in your head, you know? So then, here's my point to this, okay? Because now, when I put my toys away, and let's say if I have my toys on a counter or whatnot, I always look at my characters, and I would always have that certain image of that one character. So let's say, for example, when you're working with energies or whatnot, let's say, all right, these energies defined as what anybody would know them as. But a lot of people, the thing is, they do a lot of research. So let's say, for example, I know about the characters in WWE. Okay, the characters in WWE already have a certain persona, but I use that character's image and persona and the energy that people put into that character and persona, but I redefine the meaning of it to myself in other ways. So let's say, for example, you start to think about this. Like my son was telling me he lost his 2 front teeth because he lost his baby teeth. He's asking me, how much do these teeth cost? And I said, Damien, there's a little bit of blood on those teeth. Those teeth are priceless, which means that there is no price to them. Whatever you want, you'll get, because you have to understand that these teeth are priceless. Like, they have no value. They're just basically as valuable as you put them over here. So that means anything that you see here in this realm is basically not even close to the amount of what those teeth are costing. So whatever you want, you ask for it, and that's what you get because you have that tooth or whatever it may be. Now, he knows about the tooth fairies, but he is also very understanding that the tooth fairies are him in some other dimension. But now here's the thing though. If you look at these fairies in another dimension, they can utilize whatever physical substance you have with your intention, right? And in turn, from their dimension, which is you in another place, in another dimension, in space and time, or outside of space and time, they utilize something from you, utilize something from them. It's more of like an exchange of energy, okay? But how is all this happening, right? If you're not human and you're basically in this form making an exchange with another aspect of yourself in another form, what's the medium there? Your awareness and consciousness, right? Your awareness and consciousness is what's making all this possible. So if I'm playing with my toys, okay, and these characters have a certain persona and a certain image that I already gave to them, and a certain power that they have, a certain power in a sense where crowd reactions, which is attention and currency, the biggest currency on the planet. Okay, see, in this physical realm, I believe that the real power, the real superhero power, is the power that you can gain from actual people, whether it be a negative reaction or a positive reaction. But the whole thing is, there's also that little fine balance between the negative reaction where you get where nobody really gives a fuck, or the negative reaction where it still keeps people interested in watching you, such as like a Jake Paul character. It's just an example. So who's the medium? Who's making all this happen? If I'm the one, let's say if I am actually deifying that little character that I put so much meaning to, right? In my imagination, in my mind, in my world, he's a superstar. He has the championship belt. He's got the crowd on their feet. What's next and whatnot. But then I have an intent where I want him to do something for me, right? Damien. What happened?
I need to give this to Mom. Here, she wants to.
Let me see your teeth. Show your teeth. Look at that.
Before there was one tooth, guys, and
then you lost that second one, right?
yeah, but you took it out faster, like.
Yeah, but why? Because every time you kept eating, you kept biting it, and then you started bleeding. So it was just easier because it was already hanging by like a thread. So I just took a string and I pulled it right out.
Yeah, and now I was bleeding a lot.
Yeah, but it's okay because it stopped bleeding in a second.
You said I'm a vampire.
No, now you do, because look, go like that. Look at his teeth. So anyway, I wanted you to see that because this is where basically a lot of this topic is inspired by. But you know, if what's making all this happen, like that transaction between, let's say, a character in another dimension that basically you created to you, who is not even you in this physical form, the medium is that awareness, that consciousness that's making all that happen. So the same way I can give an image to my toys, you can give an image to like, let's say, any deity that you would, religious figure, whatever it may be, that you would create or that was created for you out here. You could redefine the meaning of that and utilize that in an actual inanimate object. Now, I'm going to make in the next video how this is actually used against you, basically in everyday life, and how you can actually change all that around to favor you. So I hope this whole entire scenario made sense about the toys and the certain things that you can do to, because you can look certain theme songs. Like when I work out, I'll listen to certain like wrestling theme songs, but that's because that's what I'm into. I'm not telling you that everybody's into wrestling, but whatever you're into. And the thing is that it could be the corniest music. It doesn't matter what music it is. Like if it gives you goosebumps, utilize that. It's giving you goosebumps, use that. You get what I'm saying? Let's say if you have a problem where, you know, you can't control your emotions to some extent because you get a little bit fearful, then change the song around. That's all you have to do, and make it a scenario. You create the scenery. It's like if I have a date, I'm putting candles, I'm burning a little bit of incense, I'm setting the table up real nice, 2 glasses of wine. What's funny is that when we create ritual altars, we use incense, candles, sometimes we use alcoholic beverages, and we do this when we're having a date. You know, we create the scenario, but you create a romantic scenery in hopes that maybe you get later, or you get somebody that you can actually say is a real valuable partner to you in your life, right? But you create the scenario. So whenever you set altars or whatever, you're creating the scenario. But if you're fearful, and why would you create a scenario like that? You get what I'm saying? And it all comes down to actually knowing what and who you actually are for you to not even be in that certain space. See, there's certain things where I can tell you right now, I'm gonna make a separate video also on like another, because I made a video on addictions, but I'm gonna make another one that's been working for me heavily on the topic of addictions. And I'm gonna do that in the next video, after maybe the next one I tie into how these inanimate objects and things, or let's say frequencies, are used against you due to ignorance. And we'll talk soon.